Okay.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting us here. An amazing venue. So, this is Sealand. Make Sealand great again. For those not familiar with it, this is the Principality of Sealand, referred to by many as the OG seastead or the original network state. Sealand was declared an independent country by my father in 1967. I was 14 years old. Just a boy, I'd left school early to join in the adventure. Let's start at the beginning, the swinging 60s. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones were topping the world charts. Young people were hungry for music, fed up with the monopoly and the censorship of the British government, and the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, had on the radio in the UK. They provided only 1 hour of pop music per week. My father did what any determined freedom seeker would do. He put together his own radio station offshore outside government controls. The government were incensed. They branded it pirate radio. The kids loved that. Everyone wants to be a pirate, right? The government prosecuted him, trying to crush that spirit and freedom of the airwaves. So he went one step further. He took his fight of freedom beyond the reach of the state and onto the long-time abandoned fortress in the North Sea. So this is where things become interesting. Instead of broadcasting from the fortress, my father declared Sealand a sovereign nation. He took his freedom back. He moved our family out to the fortress. My sister and I were both teenagers at the time, and even Fruitcake, the family cat, came along for the adventure. Once we were living there, we raised a flag, wrote a constitution, created passports, minted coins, and built all the trappings of state. Of course, declaring independence is one thing, but what comes next, the fights to defend it, and the moments that prove Sealand's sovereignty in the practice, that's where the story really begins. Of course, freedom must be fought for, and fight we did. I fought off 7 invasion attempts, with petrol bombs, firearms being my weapons of choice, and I fired warning shots at one point across the bows of a British warship that tried to intimidate us, driving it away. Curiously, this was never reported in the British press. The UK effectively then laid siege to Sealand. While out there as a teenager with my sister, no food, very little water, my father then mobilised the power of the British press and broke the blockade, exposing the government's dirty tricks department. 1968 court ruling ruled no jurisdiction. In summing up, the old judge said, "This is a swashbuckling incident." Next. Sorry. This is a swashbuckling incident, possibly... Sorry, I jumped a thing there. I don't tell you what it is. It was a swashbuckling incident, according to the judge, perhaps more worthy of the first Queen Elizabeth. So now I'm going to talk a little about our sovereign status and how this ties into our future. Since 1967, Sealand has met all 4 Montevideo Convention criteria for statehood: a permanent population, a defined territory, a functioning government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. Now, under international law, there are 2 key theories of what makes a state. The declarative theory says that sovereignty exists the moment 4 Montevideo criteria are met, whether other nations recognize you or not, or the recognition theory that says the opposite, that sovereignty only truly exists once other states recognize you.
Are we able to scroll down on the...
It's not scrolling down.
One second.
They're scrolling down now. But recognition can be unreliable and even absurd in practice. For 30 years, the United States refused to recognize communist China, a country of 1.3 billion people at the time. Now they're really scrolling down. Where am I?
And that's where I see it.
1.3 billion people at the time, yeah. Clearly it is political and not legal, and that's where Sealand stands. We sit firmly with the declarative framework. Our claim predates both the UK's 1987 extension of territorial waters and the United Nations later reclassified of man-made structures as non-territories. Because our declaration came first, it is protected under customary international law, meaning Sealand sovereignty is established and safeguarded. Our next step is to strengthen those four Montevideo pillars in the eyes of the international community and move from de facto recognition towards formal recognition. And unlike modern start-up societies or seasteading projects, Sealand doesn't just aspire to sovereignty, we have lived it for nearly 60 years.
Okay, thanks, Ed. So for those 60 years, Sealand has been continually inhabited, serving as a living symbol of independence and determination. Today, Sealand has quietly grown into a global movement. What began as my family's stand for freedom has become a worldwide community of over 1.3 million Sealanders, more than 100,000 of them financially supporting the dream. Our e-citizens now span 124 countries. These are people who identify not by borders, but by our values: freedom, adventure, and sovereignty. These aren't passive followers. They're people voting with their feet in the digital world, choosing to stand with our flag because it represents something they can't find where they live. Sealand is entirely community funded through e-citizenship and noble titles. This is proof that a country can thrive through voluntary participation and shared belief. Each year, the Sealand community expands as more people discover a nation that reflects their own values, from international sports teams in football, American football, open water swimming, and mountaineering. This photo here is actually the Sealand flag on the summit of Everest, which is a particularly proud moment for Sealand. Sealand has become a flag under which adventurers, rebels, and dreamers unite. Now, looking into the future, our fight for freedom and 60 years of independence have all built towards this moment. Sealand 2.0 is about taking the legacy and rebuilding it for the digital age. We're creating a sovereign network state, a nation that lives both in the physical world and on the blockchain. Our e-citizenship is expanding into a full digital identity system, one that includes voting, verification, and representation for Sealanders all over the world. Through the Sealand DAO, our community will help make decisions and shape our future. We're launching governance as a service, so builders, companies, and communities can operate under Sealand's digital jurisdiction. And the fortress itself will be evolving, with modern infrastructure to allow Sealanders to visit and host events. This is the future of Sealand. Sealand as a city-state. We'll transform the fortress into a hub of innovation where builders and pioneers can create freely. The mission is simple: build Sealand and our community until we're too big to ignore, earning diplomatic recognition and leading the fight back for freedom in Europe, and with any luck, inspiring others to build their own path to sovereignty. Today, we're inviting you to be part of our story. Whether you become an ambassador, an e-citizen, or simply spread the word, you're helping us build the future of Sealand. Because Sealand isn't just a fortress or a flag, it's an idea that freedom still has a home in Europe. And if enough of us believe in it, that home can grow until it's too big to ignore. Amore Libertas. Thank you very much. Okay. Are we doing questions or? Yeah. Okay, we could take a couple of questions. Anybody? Right there.
What does permanent population mean? So how many people are living there since?
So there's been at least one. There's usually a minimum of 2 people on Sealand. There's people there right now, have been for 60 years. Our population tends to go from 2 to around 15. You know, it's easier to get to in the summer months. That's usually when we have a larger population. But yeah, for the last 60 years, it's been permanently inhabited.
Maybe one more, how to visit? Because obviously I want to visit.
Well, contact me after the talk. I'll share my contact details with you. And right now, it's quite difficult to visit Sealand. We're very selective about who we take out there. you have to be a little bit more accustomed to being on the water, perhaps. But this is all part of the next phase of Sealand, is to improve that infrastructure so that we can get groups of 30, 50 people out there safely to and from Sealand and host events and really get the community involved physically. Right here. Sorry.
When I was at school in the 80s, I first heard about Sealand, and now I'm running this conference, so I'm very happy that the circle has finally closed. You mentioned this UK court decision, which basically said, if I recall it, this is outside of our jurisdiction, the UK's jurisdiction, which is a kind of approval. But this was long ago in the 60s, and in the meantime, they've extended their international waters. Was there an attempt to attack you again on a legal basis in the UK, saying, well, now they are part of the UK, before they weren't, because they were outside of the 3-mile zone. Now we have a 12-mile zone. Any other court or politician attempt since then, or the UK is leaving you alone?
I'll answer this. So back in 1978, there was quite an interesting incident involving a little bit of violence and one thing and the other. And I ended up being kidnapped and held prisoner in a steel room for 4 days, no food, no water. And I ended up on a beach in Holland and got back to England. So having got back to England and met up with my father, we obviously decided to take our country back. And the weather was bad and we couldn't use the boat, which we had access to. So we phoned up a friend of ours who'd flown in all the James Bond films, the helicopter, to a guy called John Crewdson, great pilot, great friend of our family friend. And we told him our problem. He said, okay, he said, see you at the airport at dawn. Get some ropes together. So we go to the airport, we take the doors off the helicopter, we tie the ropes on the back of the airframe, and we fly out at dawn, a metre above the North Sea. The first thing that the guy on guard on the Sealand Fortress saw was a helicopter appear from underneath with us standing outside of it with cords of ropes in our hand. I was the first man down the rope. I ran to the edge of the building. The armed mercenaries were running out the building below me. I was covering them with a shotgun. My dad went down through a hatch, got down in amongst them. I thought to myself, do I go down the hatch? And I thought, no, I can't do that. I jumped over quite a wide water tank and dropped about 12 feet in amongst them. Boom! The sawn-off shotgun went off as I hit the deck. Everybody went like that. No one pointed a gun at me. No one got hurt. They were very, very lucky. So anyway, one of these guys was a Sealand citizen. He had a Sealand passport. So we kept him. And the German government went to the British government and said, you're the nearest neighbours, do something. And the British government said there is nothing we can or will do. This man is also, I have to say, a bit of a victim of his own adventures. That was the comments amongst themselves. So the German embassy said to our British lawyer, Bonn demands the release of Herr Gernot Putz. And our lawyer said, well, I can't help you, but you're welcome to go and visit and speak to my father. So the chief legal advisor of the German embassy in London comes out in a helicopter after we had him searched at London Airport, which he had steam coming out of his ears over because he had diplomatic immunity. He kept saying that. And my mother said, if you want to go out there, you've got to be searched. And amusingly, she found a very young, fresh-faced British bobby policeman to search this guy because she didn't have anybody else with her. When he got there, we took him out the helicopter, we stood him up against it, we searched him, we stamped his diplomatic passport with a Sealand stamp. We then... My father spoke to him and he interviewed the German lawyer that was out there, and he saw that he was okay, but we wouldn't let him take him away. And so that is de facto recognition. A few weeks later, we let the guy go. But, it's been an interesting journey politically and everything. And when we started out, there was no internet, no satellites, no communication, no radios, no mobile phones. It was tough. It was interesting. We were before our time, maybe, but we were there.
Good to see you guys. It was nice to host you guys at the Draper House in Singapore, so good to see you here. What's the plan for the next phase of Sealand? Is it that you have this one amazing place and you build on top of that with all the digital services, or is the plan to build a network of Sealand locations around the world, as it seems like the baton is being passed down to a new generation? So what's the phase 2 of Sealand?
I mean, initially, at least, we're going to really focus on rebuilding the fortress, as I said, so that we can get the community more involved physically on Sealand. And our territorial waters extend out miles as well. So after building the towers that we showed the picture of in the slide, these ones. After building these towers, our intention is to build out around that and really have a city-state. We'll have embassies all over the world, run by the Sealanders in different countries. But yeah, possibly. I mean, it's going to be a network state. Our community is going to live largely online, so why not? I mean, having different places like that. But I think what makes Sealand really unique is our sovereign status. You know, with these network state projects, they're amazing. I love it. I'm really on board with it. But we actually have a legitimate sovereign claim to our land. So I think that's the differentiator. So our focus really is going to be on the fortress and the waters around us.
So what are you looking for? Hi. What are you looking for in terms of support? Here we have a very diverse group of very smart people that all share, I'm sure, the same things that you are promoting. Mm-hmm. So I heard embassies, I know community. I don't know if, well, I do know. Are you looking for investment also? Mm. Can you tell us a bit about how we can support what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you scan the QR code here, you'll see various ways that you can get involved, from being an e-citizen to becoming an ambassador. That's a new thing that we're launching just recently, is the ambassador program, because we're trying to really build solid buy-in with the Sealand community all around the world. We have large numbers of Sealanders, but to really get that solid connection to Sealand, that's what we're looking to build. So we think that'll come with the embassies. As far as investment, yes, we're looking for seed investment. We'll be going out for that in the early part of next year. So we're quite excited to raise that money and get building on the next phase.
Just an idea, wouldn't it be maybe easier to take one of these arc pads or pods or something and put it around this than building the 2 towers, maybe as a first stage?
We actually have been discussing that, so it's a possibility. Yeah, I mean the towers. This is going to be a little bit further down the line. Right now, we're going to focus on making the fortress a lot more accessible. The fortress that we have, because we love the seasteads. We know the guys that build them, and eventually, probably having those in our territorial waters would be great. But our fortress is pretty iconic, and I think it deserves to be pulled into.
I think also you have to bear in mind that when you live at sea, you actually see what the sea is capable of and the power of the sea. And I think a lot of people that get involved with this kind of stuff don't realise the absolute raw power of the weather, you know.
One thing I would actually add to that, to add a bit of colour, when I've spoken to seasteaders and all those kind of people, I say, okay, so what's the provision for security? And they say, well, how do you mean? Well, how do you stop pirates and people invading and all that kind of thing? And they kind of look a bit bemused, when of course we've been invaded several times, once successfully, obviously, then there was the counter coup. So it's an extremely important question. If you're going to build sovereignty, you have something of extreme value, and you are responsible for yourself. You know, you are your own police force, your own military, and you have to look after yourselves and your sovereignty.
Does Sealand operate its own ship registry? If not, why?
We currently don't. It's something that we're actively looking into, actually. We've been having those conversations the last few weeks, and that is something we're hoping to incorporate into the next stage. Anyone else?
Yes. Okay. Hey, big fan. You mentioned a little bit about declarative theory and the idea that even if Britain extended territorial waters and UNICLOS declared your platform non-territory, you mentioned that it would be ruled under customary law. Can you break that down a little bit further and how that relates to your claim?
I'll let Liam talk about this in a moment, but you have to bear in mind that when UNCLOS 82, when they all carved the world up amongst themselves, when there were situations like Ceuta in Africa or the Channel Islands in France, when the distance was less than 12 miles, they had to draw a median line between the two states, and we did actually extend our waters the day before the UK did.
Yeah, so also customary law protects our sovereignty, because even though UNCLOS 82 and then was when the UN resolution that allowed states to extend their territorial waters to 12 miles, the UK actually did it in 87. And essentially the customary law tells you that you can't just overwrite somebody's sovereignty. You know, you have to respect the older claim.
And the other thing is, I have to say that this particular fortress was built illegally in international waters. It was built during a time of war, so no one cared, right? It was built to defend the UK, whatever. But it was built illegally, and it was abandoned in the 50s to the elements and the weather and nature. And it should have been destroyed, and it wasn't. And there was one other fortress out in the same situation when we declared independence from Sealand, and the military, the Navy, went out and blew it up, blew it to smithereens. We saw it happening.
Okay, time's up. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.